Welcome to Ha-Shuka-Hit, the Alaska State Museum, established in 1900. We're on Tlingit Ani, Tlingit land, but the Aquan Tlingit people have been here for thousands of years, and we're guests on their land. I hope to be a good guest. As part of our programming and collaborations for the exhibition Visceral Verity Legacy Identity, Alaska Native Gut Knowledge and Perseverance, I'm delighted to introduce Coral Chernoff. Coral is an artist and culture bearer from Kodiak, Alaska, of Alutiiq, Northern Cheyenne, and Assiniboine heritage. My own specialty in the museum world, Alaskan material culture from plants and animals, is, long-standing, but I defer to Coral Chernoff, our lecturer today, when it comes to anything in-depth, hands-on of artistic knowledge for processing natural materials. I met Coral in 2011 in her Kodiak Island studio, where I sat on her couch and fumbled helplessly to mimic her hand movements as she twisted sinew into thread. It was a pivotal moment for me, a lesson about nonverbal knowledge and learning. Following the lecture, Coral will be teaching a sinew workshop, free from noon to 4 p.m. Please join me in welcoming Coral Chernoff.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for coming. It was a long journey to get here, but I am very happy to be here with you. Thank you, Ellen, and the museum for hosting me here and talking about a portion of the work that I do. So, my name is Coral Chernoff, and I live in and was raised on Kodiak Island. And if you're raised in a place where I was, in communities that I was raised in, everyone will say, well, who are you? Which really means, then they'll start asking, who's your mom, who's your brother, who's this? And then you can stop explaining when there's someone that they recognize, and they go, oh, okay, I know who you are. So it's never about who you are, it's about who is your mom, mostly who's your family. So I'm gonna do a little introduction here before I start. So, I don't know why I'm just gonna get emotional. This is my mom, who is just really just been a guide for me learning and a great support. She'll be 83 this year. This was taken 3 years ago. She's 80 years old. She is Northern Cheyenne and Assiniboine from Montana, where I spent part of my life growing up on the Indian reservation there, Northern Cheyenne. And she is also an artist. She taught basket weaving for 30 years. She taught me to sew and bead early on in my life. I probably started when I was 6, 7, 8. I started sewing and beading, and she's won awards and been in juried art shows for her grass basketry. The gentleman on the left was my father. He was a fisherman of Russian and Alutiiq heritage. And then on the right there is my mother's brother. And he lived with us for a time and was really a big inspiration for me in that he spent a lot of time gathering and making things with his hands. He was just really skilled at everything from beadwork to fishing to building homes to driving heavy equipment. Like, there was nothing that he couldn't do. And he always had a good attitude when we'd complain about bringing in wood, hauling water when I grew up. He would explain how a good attitude would make it that much better, which helped me in my 2 days getting here. 3 canceled flights, and we just went and had another meal and did more fun stuff. Here are me and my sisters. I just pulled this photo off my mom's Facebook page. My mom's 80 and has a Facebook page, so that's my younger sister up there in the corner, Rebecca, and then there's me on the right, my other younger sister, Christy, and Cleo on the bottom right. And I'm the middle child. I also have a brother. So there's 2 older and 2 younger than me. Here's a bonus picture of me and my sister. And then I have 3 children myself. So these are my 3 boys. They are all fishermen. And they're all awesome. There's another bonus picture. Okay, that was just me last summer. So now we'll get to what I do. So because I do things with my hands, I tend to not have anything written on a computer. So this is my list that is just in my shop. I decided to start writing down last year things that I work with. So this is kind of a list of the plants and animals and kelps, seaweeds, other things. These are some things that I work with. I think there's over 50 items there. And I work with all these things pretty regularly, all throughout the year. And this is kind of what I do with them. I use them for food, medicine, preservation methods, materials, and then in the last probably 4 or 5 years, I've started making my own cosmetic products, soaps, lotions, with a base of seal, bear, and deer fats. With the plants and the trees, there's many, many parts that you can use off of them. So there's the list there. Just like, we have the spruce roots, we can use the roots, and then we can use, we can pick the tips and use them for food. We can use them for medicine. I can use them in my cosmetics. So there's just a lot of things that I get busy with through the year. So this is kind of why I'm here today. I am here working with Ellen with gut skins and fibers, and with the focus on sinew. So with each material that I use, I really concentrate on what is the process to prepare it for using, and then what do I use it for. So when I started, I've always done handwork, but around 2009, when my last child graduated, I really started to study museum collections, and I really got interested in every single material that I saw, and then just really discovered that that was my love. My love was just all materials and their processes. So that's really, if I could just concentrate on that and then not ever make a finished product, then that would be my finished product, is just, the processes and working through it. And it's just really beautiful to see the transformations that the materials go through to make a usable item. So with the sinew, we really concentrate on the preparation, which is the fibers, you removing the fat and the meat, and then figuring out what are the uses by studying collections. And so you look at, it's used for sewing, it's used for bow making in the bowstring, it's used for bow backing. It's used for binding everything. Every place we would use a string or a rope to tie something down, it's used. If you want to make it stronger, you put more sinews together and you can braid it and make harnesses. And then weavings. They also wove with it. There's beautiful little weavings that I'll show you pictures of later in Alutiiq items that were made with sinew. So I'm pretty enthusiastic about all my materials and discovering everything they have to offer. So I'm just going to run through a few of my materials. And this collection of photos that we're going to go through, I really just concentrated on it, like sinew being a fiber, and then the processes of twisting, turning it into a yarn, weaving, just sort of kind of all in that, under that umbrella. So here's grass. So in my adult life, I've probably been doing grass basket weaving for the longest. I have a studio at home for 6 years now. I opened my own studio, and it's a place where I can use to teach. So I do a lot of teaching now. So these are just baskets that I start while I'm teaching to show the students, and then I just set them aside. But I love them just like the process of everything. I just love every stage and every process. I love unfinished business. I love finished business. I just think it's beautiful in all those stages. Oh, and did I say the grass is what I've been doing the longest? I probably did I think I took my mom's class when I was 23 or 24. All of us girls wanted to weave, and she made us take her class. And so we all did, and 2 of us continued to weave. So this is spruce root. And I've been probably doing spruce root just a few years less, probably since I was about 25. So 28 or 30 years I've been doing spruce root. This here, I'm really interested in netting, although I've not had the time yet to make a net. In cultures all over Alaska, there seems to be mostly 2 materials that they made nets with. One is willow bark, which this is, I believe. No, this looks like cedar bark. So one is willow bark. There's a lot of willow bark net, and there's a lot of sinew net. So that involves a lot of preparation, twisting work to make a net. So it's not something I've had time for in the last 30 years. So that's some cedar. This here is, I believe, the willow. So this is willow bark, which I've stripped off the tree. And then I've removed the outer bark. So this is just the inner bark. And then I've boiled it. And what the boiling releases all that kind of collagen. I don't know the scientific stuff that happens, but all the stuff that makes it stick together. And then it just releases those fibers so they can be pulled apart and then twisted into long lengths of line. So that's what that is. This here, a few years ago, I found a place that had a lot of nettles. So I kind of launched into a journey with nettles. So on the left here is the nettle fiber just pulled off the stalk. That there's kind of a corky stalk on the inside, so you kind of pop that out, and then you're left with this fiber, but it still has cellulose in it. So there's several different processes that you can go through. What I do is I just rub it in my hands for hours and hours, and all that stuff kind of trickles off, and then I'm left with little nettle fibers, which then, so there's nettle fibers next to that. And then here I've spun on most of my spinning I do on a hand spindle, just because I love the action of it. I love that I can take it everywhere with me. There's some more fiber. There's a little ball of yarn, and then I've knitted that, and then that I just made a little weaving. You guys have nettles here? Does anyone out here anyone in the audience do work with nettle fibers? No? It's a beautiful fiber. So this is, that's just those fibers again, but a little closer up. And then of course you probably all recognize this. This is mountain goat wool. So we had mountain goats transplanted on the island in the 60s. So we have quite a large population of them now. So my friend has a cabin, and he's got mountain goats right up. You can go out on the porch in the winter, and then you just look up to see whether the mountain goats are there or not. So it's really nice. And then his son hunts and their friends hunt. And I've provided mountain goats to people here that are spinners and weavers, so that they'll have access to materials. I'm a real big proponent of materials, and I'm always happy to, provide people with materials for sure, especially for traditional works. And then those are just combs. I use, regular wool comb techniques. Goat wool is different. It takes a lot more time to process than sheep wool, because all sheep wool is just the wool. Goat wool, you've got to pick out all the hair fibers. So if you spin with them, they eventually fall out because they're slippery and they don't spin together really well. And then I've done, experimented with the little natural dyeing, except for the one, the upper right hand one is not natural. So I've dyed with pushkis, lichens, copper, onion skins, goldenrod, some berries. And these were some yellows, I think, from dandelions and roses. And then there's a little knitted piece of mountain goat wool. I work with quite a few barks. There you see there's red cedar. We don't get red cedar, of course, but a friend gave me that. And then I work for I work for barks with barks. There we go. Mostly with tanning skins. So I tan a lot of deer skins and fish skins that I use. So mostly on our island, I use alder, willow, and spruce. And then I also teach basket classes with the bark. So we can make bark baskets sewn together like birch baskets, or we plait them. But I just love people, being introduced to, materials aren't just for cultural uses. I mean, you can just do whatever the product lets you do, it could be made into whatever you can dream up. Some more bark that I've collected. And then this is a bunch of the willow bark just after it's peeled. And then here we are with the sinew. So the sinew, I started out using sinew just for the simple plan of using it to like sew leather moccasins together. And then as I studied more and more and more, I just saw the tremendous amount that it was used in Alutiiq products. So here you just see, so sinew is a really great product in that it is strong, mostly because it's strong and it's waterproof. And it doesn't do, even when it's wet, it doesn't do a whole lot of swelling, and it doesn't do a whole lot of shrinkage. There's not a big gap in the swelling and shrinkage. It also, of course, once you clean it up, here's like a piece of sinew here, and then you see it separates into all these fibers. So then once you separate it into all these fibers, then you can separate it further into some pieces will be nice and smooth, and I separate those out and use them just as my sewing threads. And then other pieces get really cottony and kind of have a lot of texture, which makes them really great for twisting and holding together. So I do a little sorting after I separate. So here's some, this is a triple twist. So these, something like this would be used for a bowstring where you need a lot of strength. You don't want to be breaking your bowstring. Or if, perhaps for hunting. I think usually you don't see something, you usually don't see it this thick even on the harpoon, as harpoon lines. It's usually not this thick. This is usually more like a bowstring or a little thinner for a bow backing. And then I just threw in at the end here some alternate fibers. Like I said, I'm Northern Cheyenne and Sioux, Assiniboine. And of course we had a lot of bison art. And so they would do this 8-strand braid. This is bison. We have two bison herds on Kodiak Island. So this is bison fiber and twisted into yarns and then braided into 8-strand braid. And then eventually this will become a horse bridle. So that's used from Montana. These are dandelion stems that I've collected, and I'll weave with them. So there's lots of other fibers. These are from the pineapple leaves. You just on top of a pineapple. I just went to the grocery store, got some pineapple leaves. All the collagen fiber just kind of scrapes off really easily, and you're left with these beautiful fibers that are very, very soft. And they're a lot of fun. This would be great. I intend on doing kids classes with this because it's just immediate. You can immediately process it. It's something that's readily available to them, and it's a nice, soft, easy fiber to work with. And then you can see right there I have a little bit of twisted. And then I had a dye class a couple months ago, and someone brought in some dog hair. She has a husky, so this was her husky's hair, and we dyed some, and it took the dye immediately and was so beautiful. And then we just twisted it, and it felt like it held together really well. So I taught her how to spin, and within the week she had like 3 huge skeins of yarn spun. She was just a natural at spinning, and this fiber stuck together so incredibly well. It just made a beautiful fiber. So once you learn about fibers, And then you learn about a second fiber. You start to sort of have these categories that you can kind of see that things fit into and what makes a good fiber. And then like this past fall, I went to Vegas, and all I wanted to do every time I drove on the bus, I saw plant fibers, plant fibers, plant fibers, plant fibers. Like that was like my whole focus there the whole time. So it's kind of fun. Everything's going to start to look like fiber too. And then of course here's we'll start into the not a fiber but a fabric. And this is some of the gut skin. This is the bear gut. This is me. There's a river that comes down here, and mostly I like to not run our chlorinated water, through any of my materials. So I went to the beach one day and rinsed out all the bear gut, washed it a little bit, rinsed it, and then blew it up and let it dry. And this was probably 13 years ago, something like that. These here are heart sacks, or pericardium, the sac that goes around the heart. There's some little gut skin bags that I made over the years. So the big bag in the background is sea lion, and then the little bags in front are seal. And then I've worked with fish skin for a long time, and then I made these mittens. They were patterned after a pair of mittens that was in the Anchorage Museum. And they're all sewn together with sinew. And I don't know if you can really see the stitching, but I have them here, and you can take a look at that. They're all sewn with sinew. This was during the pandemic, of course. A lot of artists started making masks. So I made a little collection of masks. This was, and I brought this, but it's in the other room. So this was gut that I dyed, and then it has a little ruffle on the side. Because a lot of times, the guts, they take the little turns and turns and turns, and so then when you try and straighten them out, they don't want to straighten out. When you cut them, they are tight down the middle, and then they're ruffly on the side. So it's hard to sew those into parkas and things. So I have this idea to do this line of new raincoats, but they'll have ruffles on them. So they'll be dyed and ruffled. So there'll be a contemporary gut skin coat. So this was kind of my little practice. This one, a lot of Alutiiq bags are, they have feathers trimmed on them. This one here, this one has a sinew tie, and then a fish skin trim on the top. And then this is dyed gut that I've just cut. And then these are ptarmigan feathers along the edge. A lot of times cormorant feathers were used in my area. And then this was a gut skin parka. This was the first gut skin parka I attempted. One of my sons was in high school, so I was making it. It's patterned after an old parka that's in our previous Baranoff Museum. So it didn't have a hood on it, and I went down, took all the measurements, and I started sewing this, and I was like, oh yeah, I have some gut and I have some sinew, and I'm gonna sew this together. So the first two rows, and I brought the parka here today. I got the first two rows sewn together, and I had like 81 hours into it. That was twisting sinew. That was at a time where I thought I was doing really great at twisting sinew, and it would take me like almost an hour to do 3 feet of it. Now I can twist, like 3 feet of it in, I don't know, 10 minutes or 20 minutes. So I really was full of myself, I thought, oh, I'm doing this. So I started to do it, and I was like, I am way in over my head. And then I stopped, and I went back, and some of those little bags that you saw, I did like 2 years of doing, different size bags, getting used to seaming, turning things inside out, getting my sinew just right. And when you look at this parka, you'll see that the sinew that I used underneath on the bottom 2 rows is much thicker than so I was struggling with, when you sew gut, it has to be damp, but if you get it wet, it turns floppy. So there's that whole learning curve. And then I had giant sinew that was too big to use. So I put it down for a couple of years, probably 2 years, and then I picked it back up and then finished the top half. So this parka, start to finish, took me 3 years, but that was just because of my inexperience. And then you'll see up here at the top, I have this Dr. Sven Hawkinson, who worked at the Alutiiq Museum and I did a lot of work with. He went to a museum and he saw this patch on a parka. And so when my parka, because I've used it so many times in demonstrations and talks, it got a rip in it. So I carved this little wooden, it's kind of like a labrette. It's got a little ring around the edge where you tie the sinew. And so it's got a patch, and you'll see that in there. It's a brilliant patch because we want our parkas to be waterproof, right? And so you think, yeah, how else would you patch it? So it's a real brilliant patch. And then by the time I got this done, my son was out of high school. And if any of you have boys or been around boys, they take quite a growth spurt from high school, possibly to 20 something. So he couldn't even begin to put it on now. And that's just some close up. And you'll see at the parka too, like my stitches just were pulled too tight because I was trying to work with it too wet. My sinew was too big. And so there's so much technology in these parkas, like it's mind-boggling. And you think, how much can there be to gut and gut sewing, right? But there's a lot. It takes a lot of practice. Whew, and that's just a break. Beautiful rose. So the next section we'll just get to is I talk a lot about, I've done a lot of studying. I've done a lot of museum study. I pore over books. I don't read much of what's in them, but I look at the pictures and I try and do this on the books now to like open it, like zoom in. So this here is it's a spruce root basket that was dug up in an archaeological site, and that's Patrick Saltonstall. He's our archaeologist over there in Kodiak. So we have all these treasures over in Kodiak that are housed in Kodiak, and they were dug up in Kodiak. So we're very fortunate. Many times we have to travel. I've traveled to Russia. I've traveled to France to see Alutiiq collections, So we're really lucky to have, right in our own town, all these collections that we have access to. So this is a gut skin parka that I got to see in Russia. We went over there for basketry, to look at the basketry. And we ended up having an extra day. We got through all the stuff. So they said, oh, we have this other stuff. Like, would you like to see it? And so we went up into this attic, opened up these trunks, and they were full of gut skin parkas, bird skin parkas. I got to see a pair of throat skin pants, which are waterproof like the gut skin, but they're really tough like a leather. So that was pretty amazing. So this trip really launched me full on into my journey with all other materials. It was just the most, there was a matching skirt that went with this. So of course it wasn't done in Alutiiq style or Alutiiq style. It wasn't clear where this was collected, somewhere coastal from Kodiak to the chain. But it had bell sleeves. The sleeves were bell sleeves. The skirt was long and it was cut. I could have dampened that jacket and slipped it right on. It would have fit me. It was just beautiful. So the next set of slides is just photos from this book here, which is a catalog of these collections in Russia at this museum. And this just shows the ways sinew was used. So these, of course, are on arrows, and these would be, I think, sea otter tips. These were interesting pieces. They're cordage. This one on the bottom says it's cord from a harpoon for hunting. So I don't know if you can see, but it's more of like, I don't know what we used to call like a horsehair braid or fishtail. So that would have been really, really strong. And then this piece up here is a little woven piece. And this was on quite a few Alutiiq pieces that are in this book. They're either on the end of the cords or they're a decorative piece. They're not the usual twining that we do. It's a wrap twine, which is, as far as I've seen in baskets, is pretty unusual for Alaska. I've not seen too many wrap twine objects. Mostly you see coiling and regular twining, two-strand twine. So you can see on there's that woven piece. There's that woven piece up on this one. And this one is more like a square braid. So I would really like to study some of these and really see what the braid is and replicate those. Here's just some pieces that are wrapped. So this is just cordage made and then wrapped around this. A lot of times things are wrapped if they're wood and have an opening so that that wood doesn't split. This, of course, is wrapped to hold, my big old fat thumbs are. So yeah, you can just see all that. Looks like double strand twine. There's a better picture later, but here's a bowstring. This is an Alutiiq style bow. This is a fish hook. And of course it's just used that, once again, just used to keep that all together. Those are done with bone. There's another one. You can see the twining is kind of untwisting there. If you're trying to recreate things in museums and as an artist, it's really the most amazing thing you can see in a museum is things that are undone or torn, because then you get the opportunity to see, really how they work. Sometimes, especially with gut parkas and seams, it's really hard to see what's going on because everything's translucent, everything's stuck together. You can't see underneath it. You can only see one side of it. So it's really a blessing to have see some broken and undone things. And a lot of my twining, and I do have some on my parka. You'll see the parka strings. Actually, the parka strings on there are done with stripped intestine and not not sinew. But a lot of my early twining, I used too much water. And then when my sinew dried up, then it sort of came apart and unrolled and shrunk. Here's the nets that I was talking about. So you can imagine if you're making a net, you know, it's just a lot of long strings hanging and then a lot of knotting, you know, back and forth. So there's a lot of preparation in net making. You just have miles of twining to do before that happens. So the bottom net says for catching cormorants. And what's the other one say? Net for catching sea animals. And this is an Alutiiq cormorant parka, so it would all be sewn with sinew. And each one of those bands has like some intricate embroidered work that's also all sewn with sinew. So you can see sinew was pretty important to probably all indigenous tribes. You know, they didn't go to Joann's and pick out their spools of thread in the color they needed. So this here is another one of those. So this is like a braided harness. I think we saw one of these when we were in Russia. And it starts out wide and then it divides out into two, and then those divide out again into four. So I think one of the notes was that these were pieces that would have been woven before a young girl gets married to show her skill. I don't know if that was, I think that was one of the notes about these. And then it's got that one of those woven pieces again. And then these pieces are astounding. We saw several of these, and they're wooden, mostly birds. And then it's got that wrapped twine weaving all around them. So there's some more. In various forms of disrepair, but they're still absolutely beautiful. And then this one here, well, that one too, those red parts, they have in that row that's woven, there's longer pieces attached in there. So then it sort of is attached into the weaving and lays like fringe. And there's some more. These pieces here are also made with sinew and possibly, well, somebody said possibly some bird quill. But because I'm not familiar, I haven't seen enough bird quill work, I couldn't say. I've looked at some of those really closely and I couldn't tell. But I've made these with porcupine quills and I've made them with sinew. And I think I put 2 or 3 of them on the parka there. So they're made by just having 2 strands of sinew and then you're weaving something back and forth, sort of braiding it between the 2, and then you just pull them around and pull the inside string tighter so it pulls into a little loop, and then you catch it into your sewing or weaving. But they're really beautiful, and they're a lot of things were decorated with those. And here's one with almost all the weaving gone. But that's such a beautiful little wooden form underneath. There's more of that. Because can you ever look at that too many times? So beautiful. So here's some of the sinew that's wrapped on the bows. So this is the backing on the bow. And then there's all this work here that kind of keeps it all intact. And then it's wrapped and wrapped. I think that the wrapping part is braided and the string part is twisted. Looks like maybe that's braided too. So even, you know, after you have your sinew, there's all this beautiful, intricate work that's done to put it on there that I just love. And then these are probably sealskin little slippers. And then sewn on the top there with, probably in the front, gathered a little bit so that it fits the foot a little bit better. And then these were a pair of fish skin boots that my friend bought at an auction. It says circa 1900, salmon skin. And so it's just got a lot of the, not all of the, I don't know if they've been repaired at some point, but not all of the seams are sewn with sinew. But this here is some sinew, and you can see it's just lightly twisted. And then it's got stitches that attach it. And then this is the couching. And then the stitches are there. And that's so that doesn't pull through. And just a few more pictures of that. You can see that sinew there. The stitches. It's just some close-ups. And this is part of Kodiak Island. This is by the Coast Guard base on the way to my mom's house. And that's all I have for you today. This is the place where I go. It's my friend has a cabin, and it's all surrounded with wildlife refuge. I get my nettles out there. I do my seal and sea otter hunting, and we hunt deer. And the goats are up on the mountain, right back up over here. And this is where I get to go and relax and do my thing. So that's all I have for you. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take questions. And then if no one has questions or we cover the questions, you're welcome to come up here and look at the product that I've brought and handle it and talk about it, and be happy to have a chat about anything.
Can you tell me the process when you get bark off a tree? What protocol do you use?
So when I get bark off a tree, first protocol is I try and use trees that are being trimmed by someone else. I rarely go to a live tree, that just for the funs of it. And I like to gather my bark early or late spring and early summer when all the sap is gathering in it. It peels off really nicely. And then I just cut and peel the bark lengthwise. It usually peels very, very easily. And then depending on what bark I'm getting, there's different ways that I treat them to remove the outer bark. But then Yeah, then I remove the outer bark from them, either by using a knife. Willow, the outer bark peels off really easily. I just have to, if I just, do it like this with my hands, it kind of separates, and then I can just peel it off. And it's easiest in the spring for sure, when all those layers are easy to separate. Later in the fall or in the winter, if you get it, it's all kind of stuck together. It's all kind of shut down for business, getting ready to protect itself for the winter.
So you briefly said something about hide tanning and bark, and those two together. I was wondering if you could expound on what you meant about using the bark for your hide
So originally, the word tanning comes from tannins. You're preserving that skin with the tannins in the bark. And so all you're doing is gathering your bark, and then you're boiling it and making a tea, and then you're soaking your skins in it. And the chemistry does itself. And then when the tea gets weak, you add more when the tea gets weak, and then you just wait until it's worked its way all the way through. Yeah, I did brain tanning for a long time, and for quite a few years. And then I got into bark tanning. And then once I got into bark tanning, I was like, holy cow, this is easy. I was like, wait, what? I just make tea and then dump it in a tote and leave it? That's pretty much all you do, yeah. And then you can oil. You don't always need oil skins. I love willow bark tanning is my favorite because it gives you a really nice soft tan. And it doesn't tend to need oiling when you're done. Spruce definitely gives a harder tan for me, and alder bark. But the alder bark tanned, if you're ever interested in tanning skins, the alder bark gives just the loveliest smell. That I have stuff that I've tanned probably 8 years ago or something like that, and maybe 11, 12. And it still smells just lovely. Yeah. Each bark definitely has a different feel and texture and color in the tanning. So if you're interested, it's nice to try them all. See what you like.
I saw that you were showing a lot about the bear intestines, specifically for the sinew aspects, and doing some of the old style coats. I also was born on Kodiak, and I remember them talking about the seasonality of bear harvest, specifically for using the intestines, and how they would choose bears up in the hills so they didn't have all the fish bones or anything like that for cleaning. I was wondering, is there a seasonality to harvesting a lot of those intestines? I remember them talking a little bit about either getting it early before they got the fish, or when they're up in the hills when they're actually not getting as many. Some of them said locations were important too. I'm talking about the south side of the island, like Fraser Lake, where they didn't necessarily have as many salmon for harvest in the old days. So I wasn't sure if that was, you noticed while you're harvesting bear gut or anything, there's like a nice location or seasonality to the harvest.
I had heard that also a lot of times, but I've harvested a lot of bear gut and cleaned a lot of bear gut and used a lot of bear gut, and I've not found any difference. And if we come up here later, you can feel the bear guts. Each bear has its own texture anyway. So I would have to say, like, in my experience, I haven't found that any particular season is any different than another. Mostly I found the range is just one bear is different than another bear. I don't know if it's because it's older or younger. Some bears, I don't know what they've looked like. I've just received the guts. the intestines, and so, yeah, I haven't noticed. I did, one time I got a bear intestine that it did have a lot of fish bones in it. And it also had little, like little scars. Like, so there was some scarring, because I guess, bear are made to eat fish, and so their intestines probably have this instinct to repair themselves right away. But it didn't cause holes or anything like that I really saw. Uh-oh, this is going to be a hard question.
I hope not. Thank you for being here today. My question was with regards to sort of the manufacture of sinew, going all the way back to the very beginning of the process where you have an animal. What do you see, and what are you taking off of the animal at that point in order to get to what's on the table?
Oh, perfect. Good question. So, sinew is that part of the muscle that is attached to the muscle, and then it attaches to the bone, right? And so we've all had a steak or a piece of meat, and we chew that hard, stringy piece of something, or you cut into a steak and it's a kind of it's a hard layer, it's kind of a rainbowy color. But it's attached, every muscle has sinew attaching it to another muscle or the bone. So you can use any sinew, all that is usable. But really, if you're looking to manufacture threads and using it, you're going to want to use the longest pieces of sinew. So the longest pieces of sinew or usable sinew are not the same on any animal. So like, the moose, so moose and caribou and deer, you would take that all from a back strap. They have a sinew piece that attaches all in there. It's the longest piece. A bear does not have a back strap. A bear has pieces that attach its muscles from its backbone this way. So there's lots of little pieces going all the way down its back. Same with the seal. You hear a lot of people talk about taking the tendons. I've tried to take the tendons before from caribou, bison. To me, there's too much work, because the threads come apart, but then they end up in this tight little hard band down at the bottom that people say you can pound and separate. But other sinews on other parts are just really have that equal strength. So for me personally, I've taken sinew off a hare. I've taken sinew off of goats. I've taken sinew off of ducks. Just to test them all and see what they're like. But sinew essentially is sinew. It's made up of the strong strands together, held by, usually there's a softer, kind of more clothy strand that goes crosswise to hold it together. So when you take a sinew off, it's going to have meat on it. You're going to scrape that off. It's going to have fat on it. You're going to scrape that off. And I brought some sinew that I got this past winter, and you'll see that it still has little bits of fat on it, because when you're cleaning it, you can't always see. And so you'll be able to see it still has this little fat that then later you can go back and leave on there, or scrape off or cut off before you use it. In the beginning too, I used to, we have this thing about cleaning everything. Clean. And so I would just like clean my guts and with soap and whatever. And then I thought, well, they didn't have soap, so my ancestors didn't have soap. So I kind of stopped cleaning. And I found that there's just some things that you do have to spend time cleaning, because a lot of times in materials, the fat will break it down eventually. But then I thought, if I don't need it to last 200 years, that's not going to make a difference to me. And if I want to use something, eventually that fat will wear away. So that's kind of been the case. If I make something that I use, I don't worry about washing all the fats off. And if I want it, like a heart sack, if I'm going to make a bag, if I wanted it to be waterproof, and like take it with me in my kayak or whatever and keep stuff in it, I wouldn't be worried about taking all the fat off of it. So I start to think, how would the native people have used it? What would they have used it for? And so is what I'm doing critical to that use? And then I do make a lot of my stuff. Every time I sort of start working with a new material, I've looked back and thought back on it, and it probably takes me about 6 years to get to a place where I feel like I know what that material is. Like I was talking about the sinew, where I've got goat and, well, then I hear things about, oh, you can only use the sinew, or you use the sinew, the tendons. And usually it's someone telling me that has never seen sinew or touched sinew in their life. So then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have to explore that. So then that's what I do. I explore it. I get all the sinew that I can. Every time I get an animal, I get sinew off of it. I use it, I twist it, I discover. And so it just lets me build a huge database of information that I can use and move forward with. Yes.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I was wondering if your process for tanning, or if there is a tanning process with working with guts similar to working with hides, or if you just dry it and use it as is.
Yeah, so I guess when we talk about gut, I'm thinking about different products. If we're talking about intestine, and actually, none of the gut products are like skin products. So I guess we'll start there. And then the different gut products have different processes because of, I guess, how they're built. Like an intestine is it takes the most processing, because an intestine is all covered with an outside muscle. There's a muscle all outside that has to be scraped off. And a bear, I mean, you could be scraping 150 feet of muscle off of a bear. And then the inside, it has all that kind of mucousy structure and all the stuff that whatever it uses on the inside that I used to scrape off, but now I don't worry about it so much anymore. Now I'll just turn it inside out and dry it, because essentially all that will just flake off if you give it an opportunity to dry. If I'm going to leave it on and give it an opportunity to dry, then I will turn the gut inside out. Because if I leave it inside, it's going to keep it wet, and then it's going to start like breaking down. So yeah. Any more questions?
Could you speak to the heart bags, I guess, how the processing of those?
Yes. So the heart sacks, the first issue with the heart sack is when when I first went to retrieve a heart sac, me and my friend went, heart sac? Like, we've never seen a heart sac. Like, you go in there and you get the heart, when you're cleaning your deer or whatever. And we're like, what's a heart sac? So then his son came back with one, and we're like, whoa, wait a minute. And then I tried to get one out, and what happens is they're so thin and they're so small on there that once you cut them off, they just shrink up. You could lose them. Like, that's essentially what happens. You lose them because they come off and their structure just lets them just come to almost nothing. So first issue is getting the heart sac. You have to know that you're going in for it when you go in. Otherwise, you'll lose it. You won't even know where it's at. So then once you get it, a heart sac's pretty clean. The only thing about the heart sac is it will have areas of fat on the outside. And when I first started doing it, it also has a couple layers, some layers to it. So in the beginning, when I first started doing it, I was like, oh, it seems like this peels. And then you start peeling and you're peeling. Pretty soon you have a hole. So I never do any peeling layers anymore. I just wash it a few times with soap and water. Sometimes they'll have blood on them. So I just wash them and rinse them really well. And then I just take a bunch of dish towels, those white drying dish towels. I don't know how many of you in this room have dried dishes. Probably everyone over 40, but everyone under 40 probably has not dried dishes unless your grandma made you dry dishes with the white towels. So I just stuff those in, a bunch of them, and then let the heart sac dry full out. That's just so I don't get any folds in it and leave wet spots and stuff. And then as it's drying, I just because I can't leave anything alone, I will just start pulling at the fat or cutting the fat off. And then after you let it dry, sometimes they'll still be fat. It runs along like a certain line or kind of at the bottom. So heart sacs are pretty easy to clean. What else do I have? Oh, the esophagus. There's nothing to do with an esophagus. You just take it and you can blow it up like an intestine, but then if you blow it up and dry it, then you have to seal the ends, and then you end up losing some of that because it gets kind of crinkly or whatever. So for me now, it's preferable to just cut it down the edge, open it up, and then tack it down on something. It's not really fatty, or it's a little bit maybe greasy, and so rinsing it's giving it one little wash and then tacking it out. It's really easy. And I think that's all that's over there. Oh, I do have some lung sacs too. Lung sacs are, I don't even remember where I saw that you could use lung sacs. Maybe it was, I had read something about up north them using whale lung sacs for drums. That might have been that reference that I had to that made me go look for lung sacs. Lung sacs are easy also because they're not fatty. You just have, both of them with the lung, and then they're attached kind of in the middle. So you just cut around there, and then you just peel like the little lung out of there, just gently with your hands. And then they're really strong. So I can go to the river, usually I'm at the beach when I'm cleaning that. So I'll clean it up, and then I'll go to the river, just kind of rinse it out. But I can just scoop up water, and it will just get stretched to the maximum. And then I can hold, and water is pretty heavy. And I don't ever have to remember, because my friend always remembers how much water weighs. And he'll go, oh, that's how much it weighs. But water's pretty heavy, and when you feel how thin it is, it kind of boggles the mind. to think that it's holding that much water when it's scooped up. And so I've stretched one over a drum head before, and it makes just a beautiful, really beautiful sound. Which is probably because, its stretchiness, its structure, and maybe the thinness. It's not just like that pound, 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 that kind of low thumping that you get from a hide or a rawhide, or even a stomach, that's a little bit thicker. It just makes a really beautiful sound. And there's basically no cleaning to it at all. Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, how do you do the stomach, just to finish off the organs?
So a stomach for me is a little bit harder. And what I like to do when I'm working stuff is always try to work my way back to how was it done with what was available to them. So I've tried drying a stomach before, but because it's so thick and it has so much stomach lining, I've explored. First, I thought you had to scrape that stuff off, the inside out. But when I've peeled it apart before, the inside of the stomach, say you start out with a stomach this big, then when you peel that inside out, because it's all warbled inside there, it turns out to be like this big on the outside. So you can actually separate the inside from the outside. But then I went back to look at collections, and none of it looked like it was separated. So then I try and dry it by blowing it up and plugging it, but all you're doing is trapping the wetness in there. So what I've done, all my last ones were I either fill them up with kitty litter or rice and beans to sort of, and then that way you can leave them open, but it fills it up and leaves it stretched out. Because all those folds inside, I don't know, maybe they stuffed them with grass, I think that was going to be my next attempt, was stuffing them with dry grass. Because there's so many folds in there, you wouldn't want it to rot, cause any sort of... Yeah, I guess you could do that, or like stuff it and keep it warmer by a fire or something. Dry it quickly. No, I think salt would probably work. But I guess I've never tried salt, A, because that's a lot of salt. And B, like I said, I try and go back to how they would have done it, like how my ancestors would have done it in the past.
Also, in this climate, salt's going to just draw the moisture out of the air. I wish you were in a real dry climate, maybe. But I think here you're just going to end up drawing moisture from the air into the salt.
Well, and I think even I've discovered from tanning skins, and I used to salt them first, and I do try and stay away from the salt too, because I've tanned some skins and then try and make a knife sheath, and no matter how much you've rinsed or what other process that you've used after that, it will cause rusting in my knives. And then, like I said, I just go back to, what there was access to.
So going back to sort of the getting all these guts, are people just like when you hunt and you usually cut out and you have a gut pile, is that what you're harvesting, or are you actually trying to like go into the cavity and remove these, like the heart sac separate, or are you actually, is it like the gut pile that you're working with?
It depends. Sometimes I've gone, like we've had friends that have shot bear. So then we'll like, oh, where'd you shoot it? And we'll go borrow a four-wheeler and take off and go up the hill and climb a mountain and find it, you know? And so we'll do that way because they've just skinned it and left it. So, and then if I seal hunt or sea lion hunt, I know all the pieces that I'm getting. So I make sure that, you know, I have time to go through that. So yeah, I'll get in there and then I'll start, you know, remove the stomach, make sure I cut everything to get, you know, the maximum product that I want. And then I like that much better than, I think in the beginning and I'll always take product, but I like my own hunting and my own collecting because I know, for me, there's a lot of respect and ethics involved in that. And I'm just really thankful and careful and grateful about the way I do that. I've had people that want to go out and get like spruce roots for me, and they go out and then they just bring me back all this everything, and then I've gone with them and they're just ripping it out of the ground and not returning it, and you know, they're just, and I'm just like, oh my Lord. And then I've seen I've had discussions with museums or people that work with museums, and a friend of mine who works with museums and says, and tell them that like my culture's not a fun game, and it bothers me to see you know, like a museum having like a staff party blowing up guts and stringing them all over and putting pictures on Facebook, you know, that just kind of breaks my heart. And so when I have classes, when I talk about working with animal parts, I say, don't, like, if you would not, like, don't do anything with this that you would not do with your dead grandmother's parts. It's the same thing. Like, have all the greatest respect in the world. You know, it's not a fun game, and these aren't just things we've gone to Joann's and bought. You know, this life has been given, and we should treat it with respect. On that note, we had a question. And then did we have another question back there?
Well, just bladders. Because bladders seem pretty easy in some ways.
Yes.
And are there better bladders than others? I've only retrieved a bladder from a bison. I tried to retrieve a bladder from a seal one time, and I got a seal bladder, and it was like this big. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe seals don't need big bladders. I don't know how you determine the size of a bladder that an animal is going to have. But I do, that's kind of one of the next roads I'm going down is bladder collection. There actually are some cool ones here in the museum here.
Oh, I'd love to see them. Yeah, the Northern Cheyenne and Sioux, they use the bladders and they flatten them and fold them over and then do quill work on the sides, and so they're to hold their quills. And their structure's beautiful and it's fascinating. And I have a bison bladder that is small at home, and then I can put over a gallon of water in it. Like, it just keeps expanding. Yeah. And then on that one, I put a little, I just put a little wooden plug on top, and I just think it looks so beautiful. I just don't want to do anything else to it. And I would just use that little wooden plug to blow it up when I was drying it. But yeah. Yeah, so if there's no more questions, you guys are welcome to, we'll take one here.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about like the chords. I saw that there was some Z twist and some S twist. Do you think that was like a preference thing, or do you use different methods when you make cordage?
You know, I've never noticed that in the sinew cordage. Yeah, I'll have to go back and check that. I've never noticed a difference in the cordage twist. I know I twist mine all the one way, just that feels right in the beginning. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. And then that would be a really great thing to note, because for weaving in particular, it's, well, and I know it would be for knitting too, the way you knit. Sometimes if something's twisted the wrong way, then it untwists while you're knitting it. Do you happen to know which one had that twist in it? Oh, yeah. Interesting. Well, now I will definitely keep my eye on that. But no, I had never noticed that before. Yeah, so if you guys want to come up here and have any questions, you can take